Hello family, BL Carter here, affectionately known as Miss B, hoping that you continue to work your puzzle one piece at a time. Today I wanted to bring some light or shed some light on a recent situation in the Texas area, Waller County, Texas. As we can see, Mr. Evan Lyndel Parker, age 34, was found hanging in the same Texas jail cell as Sandra Bland was found hanging 4 years ago. So let's think about that. So Mr. Evan Lyndel Parker, he was charged with murder and aggravated assault on January 9th. Well, he was arrested on January 10th. He's charged with murdering his supervisor and committing aggravated assault with a deadly weapon on his coworker. The supervisor, Mr. Harry Parnell Jr., and the coworker, Jose Rangel. Mr. Parker worked at, he was in quality control, I believe, at Horizon Industries in Brookshire, Texas. Mr. Parnell was the night supervisor or night superintendent, and Jose Rangel was a peer coworker. Apparently, the reports from the company say there were no prior conflicts at the steel plant, and Mr. Parker and Mr. Parnell obviously had some sort of altercation, confrontation, and Rangel, along with other employees, attempted to break it up. Mr. Parker is accused of stabbing Mr. Parnell to death, as well as stabbing Jose Rangel, who was critically injured and, as of this date, is still in the hospital. One report says that Parker told some of the co-workers he wasn't feeling well. Another report said he told people that they had been messing with him. Another report says they have no motive for the incident at all. So we don't know what motivated the incident at this point. I'm sure more details to come. But now what's disturbing is that this is the very same Waller County, Texas jail cell. Not the same jailhouse, not the same county, but the exact same cell that Sandra Bland was found hanging in. And after Sandra Bland's death, Governor Greg Abbott in Texas signed the Sandra Bland Act. And one of the things that act required was that the jailers, the officers, would do more frequent checks, in-person checks of the inmates, as well as institute sensors and cameras and other things like that to ramp up the around-the-clock monitoring of prisoners. Apparently there was an inspection in December of this very same facility, and the facility did not meet the standards for the frequency of observation. They were supposed to be having in-person observation with the inmates on a more frequent basis, and according to that inspection, they were going, sometimes 2 hours in between seeing the inmates. However, being on suicide watch requires a more frequent check, and there's some conflicting reports as to whether that was done. And I'll get into that in just a minute. Now, just a little bit of background here. I mentioned Mr. Parker already. Mr. Parnell, the deceased man, and my condolences to his family. Mr. Parnell, he's a native of Galveston, Texas, and he is the father of a City of Katy, Texas Police Department officer. So Mr. Parnell's son is a police officer in Katy, Texas, which is about 45 minutes away from where they were. And as I said already, he was a night superintendent at this steel plant, Horizon Industries, and he'd been there for 20 years. Now, I've not been able to find a whole lot of information on Mr. Rangel, other than he was an employee there and he'd been there for under a year. And there were no prior issues, according to the company, with him. The sheriff gave an account of Mr. Parker's movements on the day before he died, which is mighty strange. But supposedly, when they, get checked into prison, going through the booking process, it was a regular, normal booking process, whereby he was checked. The medical screening did not see any issue, any need for a suicide watch, or any additional medical care that was necessary for him. So, when the sheriff gave his account of the inmate's movements on the day before he died, and I can only assume he's going by what's being reported to him by the jailers, because you would assume a sheriff, has a lot of work to do and he can't just sit in the jail the whole time. But according to the sheriff's account, Mr. Parker went to the nurse's office for a routine medical visit. So, on the one hand, his booking said he required no additional medical care, but according to the report, now he went, the day before he died, he went to the nurse for a routine medical visit. He'd been seen socializing with another inmate and the guards in the common room the day before. And around 11 o'clock that night, he went to his cell to go to bed. So I don't know what jail allows inmates to be hanging out in the common room up to 11 o'clock at night. But supposedly, 11 o'clock at night, he went to his cell to go to bed. And he was observed at least 3 or 4 times. He was checked on at 2:21 a.m., but at 2:57 a.m. he was found in his cell. So at 2:57 a.m. on Friday, January 25th, he was found hanging in his cell. Parker was taken to Memorial Hermann Hospital in Houston and died on Sunday. The sheriff's office didn't release a public statement about the death until Wednesday, January 30th. And then we have a statement. That was the sheriff's statement. And now we have a statement from the DA's office. On Friday, February 1st, there was an apparent suicide attempt at the Waller County Jail in the early morning hours of January 25th. Upon discovery of the male inmate, he was rushed to the hospital in Houston, where he is alive and being treated for his injuries. At the request of the Waller County Sheriff, the FBI and the Texas Rangers have been asked to take the lead in the investigation surrounding the suicide attempt. At this time, there is no additional information to show that any procedures or guidelines were not followed by the jail staff. So, and then I have one additional statement from the sheriff that actually, and I'm going to read that. Well, I'm going to read portions of it. The sheriff said, "It's hard on the jailers. I promise you. I saw the look when I got up there that morning. I saw the look in their eyes, and I know personally how they feel to lose someone." Digest that for a minute. I'm going to get back to that. And continue the sheriff's statement. "I'm not going to sit here and make excuses," Sheriff Smith said. "It's what it sums up to. We got a responsibility to check on them." So, and you can, the reports are all over the place. Houston Cron, Cron.com. It's the Houston Chronicle newspaper, Waller County, Texas. You can do the searches and find more details. But I've got some questions, and I'm just going to raise these questions and put them out there and let you guys kind of toy with it a little bit. So my first question is about the arrest. Now, this black male stabbed to death a white male and critically injured a Hispanic male. I'm assuming he's Hispanic based on the name. I've not seen any pictures of him or gotten any confirmation. So they go to the black male's home and they arrest him at his residence. There was allegedly a short, 10, 15-minute standoff, but they were able to arrest him and bring him to the jail. And that's my first question. In this country, black males don't get the opportunity to have a standoff with the police. They don't get the opportunity to have dialogue or discourse with the police. Police shoot first. So that was a red flag for me. I'm not sure, whatever. Details gonna come out later. My next question. Was he already dead before he made it to the hospital? Some news reports said he was found dead in his cell. Think back to what the sheriff said very clearly. The sheriff very clearly said, what? I knew the moment, well, he didn't say the moment, I knew that morning when I got up there and I saw the look in their eyes, meaning the officers that work there, and I know personally how they feel to lose someone. So that just makes me wonder if he was alive at all when they took him out of there. My next question with this whole scenario. They are in Waller County, Texas, and they transported him to Memorial Hermann Hospital in Houston. Now, there are several Memorial Hermanns, and I've not been able to identify exactly which location, but there's a Memorial Hermann Hospital in Katy, which is much closer than Houston. There are several other hospitals between Waller and Houston. So I'm not sure why they took him all the way into Houston when there are other hospitals between there and Houston. So I just wonder about that. Excuse me. I wonder what was the method of transport? Was he life-flighted? Was it a regular ambulance ride? These are questions that cross my mind. Next question I have is the booking, the actual booking process. They're going through routine booking, and it involves medical screening. The reports made it a point to say that based on the screening, the local mental health people, the nurses, the medical staff there, did not think Parker needed any additional treatment. They didn't think he needed to be on suicide watch or anything like that. So if that were the case, why was he placed on suicide watch? According to Sheriff Smith, the local jail officials, regardless of what the medical staff said and the mental health staff, the local jail officials placed him on suicide watch anyway. And allegedly they placed him there because of the incident at work. Now, they had no motive for the crime. He had complained of being picked on at work. And non-medical jail staff thinks he needs to be on a suicide watch when medical staff said he didn't. Or they didn't necessarily say he didn't, but they checked him and said he didn't need it. Or said it wasn't necessary. The sheriff at one point also said he was being checked on every 15 minutes. So, if he's being checked on every 15 minutes, when was that? Was that on suicide watch or off the watch? Because the investigation had showed previously, your inspection previously showed that they weren't checking them as often as that. And it's up to 2 hours in between checks. Now, according to the reports, Mr. Parker was taken off suicide watch after 3 or 4 days. We don't know which one. We just know he was taken off after 3 or 4 days, according to the sheriff. And during his time at the jail, he was described as quiet and reserved. So, he's on suicide watch, but he's quiet and reserved. He's socializing with other inmates. He's socializing with the guards, and he just conveniently go in and just decide to hang himself. Another question I have. The county judge, one of the judges in the county, reported that all requirements by jail staff were met. And that you can't, basically, he said, if a person is intent on killing themselves, no matter what precautions you take, they're going to do it. And it is what it is, but we've done what we're supposed to do. Now, let me ask, if the sheriff has said he's being checked on every 15 minutes, but inspection reports show that they weren't being checked that frequently, and it also shows that they were checked up to 2 hours, and the sheriff has already previously said in a report that, he's not going to make excuses. It's their responsibility to check on them. That leads me to believe he was not being checked on every 15 minutes or whatever frequency that was required. As a matter of fact, the sheriff even said that the inspection where it showed they were not checking on them as frequent as they're supposed to, that was probably a computer error mix-up or something. Well, now, the Sandra Bland Act very clearly said you're not checking on them by computer. You're checking flesh, person to person, face to face. So I'm not sure if I understand the computer error in showing that he wasn't checked in the proper intervals, or that the other inmates weren't being checked in proper intervals. Another question. Now, we see very clearly on the district attorney's Facebook page, Mr. Parker's criminal history is highlighted. It's highlighted that he's got previous charges of aggravated robbery, assault, resisting arrest, and aggravated assault against a public servant. That's on his Facebook page, on the district attorney's Facebook page. But we have no background on the injured, Mr. Rangel. We have no background on the deceased. But we made it a point to put Mr. Parker, the hanging victim. We made it a point to put his criminal background. And I will offer for anyone, I know I don't have to tell most of you all this, you all know this. As I said earlier, rarely in America does a black male get the chance to have discord or standoffs with the police. They roll up shooting. I wasn't there, I don't know. I can only go by the reports. The reports that I'm seeing from about 8 different sources are conflicting with, well, actually, I won't say conflicting. They're making me have a lot of questions. I will also say very clearly that when they've done the background and they see that he has this history of aggravated robbery, assault, resisting arrest, aggravated assault against a public servant, and they went to this black male and they allowed him time to have discourse and a standoff. I go back to saying, was he alive when they took him out of that jail? And when he was transported to a hospital, what was the method of transport? And why go all the way to Houston when I know there are other hospitals along the way? Which hospital in Houston? And then several days later, you finally notify the public? Oh, well, they said they were waiting to notify his family first. Okay, I can give them that. I do know I've got some questions. I think there's a whole lot more to the story to come out. At this point, the Texas Rangers, Texas Commission on Jail Standards, and a couple other folk are investigated. FBI, I believe, is supposedly taking over the investigations in the case. And any media requests, the sheriff is no longer to talk. The local county people are no longer to talk. Any media requests regarding this particular case are to go through the Texas Rangers office. So, okay. It's time for a discussion, guys. It's time for a discussion. Get your thoughts together. Be blessed.